All right, good Monday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in to our live stream. My name is Kevin Duthu with HWPco, and I'm extremely excited to announce that I've got on the call with me today Marcus Myers, Director of Operations for HWPco, and our very special guest, Scott Walker, President of Waveguide. So welcome to the call, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, Marcus.
Good to see y'all.
Thanks for the intro, guys. Thanks for being on this live stream with HWP and Waveguide. Scott, thank you for taking a few minutes to sit and hang, man. That's really what we're here to do.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. This is an interesting time, but not more interesting than the fact that it is May 4th. So let's be honest. We're all Star Wars fans, at least everyone on this call, certainly. So, yeah.
Nerd alert.
Yeah.
No comment.
Let's really address the elephant in the room. May the 4th be with you. That's what I have to say. That's what we're really talking about. That's why we're really here. But we like to have fun on these calls and these conversations. So we're going to do a little bit of that today. Sprinkled into some of these questions that we're going to ask Scott are going to be some fun Star Wars questions just to test his Star Wars knowledge. We're also going to have a time at the end for some Q&A. So if you'd like to, and you're on the call with us and you have a question for Scott now or during this interview, this live stream, please put it in the chat window. Also, we'd love for you to subscribe to our core media channel on YouTube for more content like this and other types of things. We are here for you guys, and more importantly, be safe, be healthy. We want you to be safe and be healthy. We know that this is an interesting time. We wanted to have Scott join us today, frankly, because he has such an incredibly unique position as a consultant and in his role in the industry that we really kind of wanted to pick his brain and get an idea of what this new normal might look like. I mean, at the end of the day, we have a lot of change on the horizon. So, a new normal, a new hope in honor of May 4th. And Scott, if I can kick us off, some of our viewers might not necessarily know a whole lot about you or a whole lot about Waveguide. Give us a little brief history. How did we get here? What are you guys all about?
Boy. Well, like probably 3/4 of your listeners, I'm a failed musician. So that's how you end up in the AV business. You combine that with an electrical engineering degree and you get an AV consultant. It's pretty much the raw materials. So I've been an AV consultant for 31 years. I started Waveguide 23 plus years ago. We're independent consultants, so we're on the design side of life. We do AV, IT, and acoustics. We also do software programming. We kind of morphed that into data analytics in this modern era. And we also do managed services. So I have about 140 employees at 40 client sites running AV systems that we design and program and commission. So that's a little bit nutshell for us. We're mostly in the corporate space, also higher ed, government, military, conference centers, courthouses, you name it.
Man, that's broad, and that's a lot of folks. That's a lot of folks. Are those all over the world, you said, or just in the United States?
Well, we have about 200 employees total. We have 9 corporate consulting offices around the US, and we're on 40 client sites for 16 different corporate clients like Coca-Cola, MetLife, Capital One, Pfizer, et cetera.
So from a what does Waveguide do point of view in that context, you guys have become kind of a different and more forward-thinking kind of consultancy, really. I mean, in the beginning and for a long time, it was a consultant specification role, correct?
Right.
A customer would come and ask you to specify a project. So I guess to that end, what is it that you find is your top priority as you're working with a partner, and what are they really asking for today, and then how do you kind of offer them more from the value side?
Sure. If we were on our worst day, consultants or order takers, right? Mr. Client, what do you need? You need these microphones, go into this mixer, go into these speakers. Well, whoop-de-doo, you know, who can't do that after a while? What we need to be are, what are you trying to do as a corporation or a university or a government entity? How can we help you communicate better? How big of a net can we cast, and how simple can we make this for your entire organization? So we don't really look at waiting for an RFP for a project to come along as, oh, please let there be an RFP in my inbox. We really want to develop relationships with clients. And essentially, our mantra is kind of go where the pain is, go where it's hard, do the thing that nobody else really wants to do, because that's where the value is to the client, is finding that hardest thing we can imagine that is just adjacent to the thing we probably already do, and go and jump on that. So years and years ago, it was software programming was sort of a broken part of our industry. Well, can we make that better? What if we could tie the design more intimately to the user experience? So we started a software division about 16 years ago. Then we realized we're designing systems for our clients that many of them don't have the staff to run. So what kind of malpractice is that to say, here's $10 million of AV, good luck with all that. So we started a managed service business to help our clients actually own and operate that equipment. More recently, we've said, people are really interested in knowing more about their real estate. Maybe even if it has nothing to do with AV, we can be in the data analytics business, because it's kind of sort of like what we do in AV. So we can help corporate real estate understand how many people are on this campus today, what floor are they on, which rooms are they in, what are they doing in those rooms, how many attendees are live, how many are virtual. If we just were sitting around waiting to draw drawings all day, that wouldn't be enough. We just kind of keep going wherever it's hard. That's kind of our mantra.
That's cool. It's not just going where it's hard. It's also the idea of building value once you get there.
Right. Sure. And think about what the client values, not what we value. I love me a great set of speakers and cranking up the sound system. The client may not care that much about that. So what do they care about? They care that they got 2 million square feet of real estate and they want to use it wisely. And is their technology investment paying off? And are people using it? And are meetings going without a hitch? That's what they want to know.
That's pretty neat. That's really cool. And then essentially applying the idea that you bring your expert level stuff to it and being able to build something they might not have thought of themselves. That's what's really fascinating.
Yeah.
That's like the Henry Ford stuff, where he said that if he would have listened to his customer only, he would have built a faster horse.
Right. Or Steve Jobs, saying, if I waited for them to tell me they wanted an iPhone, I never would have made an iPhone. We had to go make one first.
Man, yeah.
And of course, just to finish that, we work alongside systems integrators. They're the ones who have to build and install it. That ain't easy. We work alongside reps like yourself, systems, manufacturers, the whole ecosystem. I do want to have a shout out for our brothers and sisters in live events. It's hard times over there right now. We're fortunate that we're working on the built environment, so we've got maybe a longer runway or a gangplank, depending on how you want to look at it, that we can keep drawing and keep designing while live events are just shuttered. So that ain't easy. And I feel for all the, people on that side of the business. And maybe if maybe there's something I'll say today that will help spark an idea. I hope so, because, there, but for a few months, maybe go I. So, shout out to those folks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know they do. We've had a fair number of our customers finding themselves in industries that are getting hit harder than others, certainly. And when basically your entire business is centered around people gathering together, man, there's not a whole lot that can be done. But that is really, you hit on it. That's why we're here. We're really trying to stir the hornet's nest and give some folks some different points of view and some different perspectives. So, yeah, it's exciting to hear you talk about building new things. That leads us to our first Star Wars question, which is, who built C-3PO? This is an important question.
Who built? Character. Well, man, I want to say Obi-Wan, but that can't be right.
I'm going to point you to the episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's
young Anakin.
Game. You got it. That's a dangerous game.
I was trying to put that out of my mind. That's like Jar Jar. You just kind of suppress that.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. P.S. I'm pretty sure Jar Jar is the COVID-19 of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
But we won't linger too long on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so moving on, hearing about Waveguide, I know that you guys tend to work on a lot larger projects that oftentimes can have larger sales cycles, larger construction cycles. What does that look like from your client's perspective? What's the impact been to their facilities and those projects that you're working on?
Well, I think we're all processing this thing 1 week at a time. It's like, okay, is this real? Yes, this is real. Okay, how long is this going to go on exactly? Oh, that long? Okay, can we make it shorter? So I think projects that are early in design are kind of moving along apace. Some that are late in design, maybe the construction has been halted for a few months. And then there's a whole bunch in the middle. And by and large, there's an ecosystem of people, architects, engineers, owners reps. They all kind of want to keep a living going too, right? They want to keep food on the table. So, hey, we can keep drawing and designing that headquarters project or that big conference center. And so we have about 110 projects going on. About 20 went on hold, but 90 kept rolling along. And we hope that the 20 that went on hold, some will come off hold in 60 to 90 days. A few have said it'll be September, and one or two have said it'll be January. Now, this is an important point. I think a whole lot more are going to go, wait a minute. What are we building again? Because isn't the math all different now? Are we building for 2,000 people? Or are we building for 1,000 people at a time? Or what are we building for? And what I've been telling my guys is when you start to hear that talk, get inside the teepee before the flap shuts and we're standing outside in the cold.
Yeah.
Because we need to be inside in the room where it happens, to use the Hamilton line, because we have a certain set of skills. We have things we can do, and we need to apply those skills to help them figure that out. For instance, take room scheduling. Well, we need to have 2 different capacities for every room in the scheduling platform. This room seats 20, except in social distancing, it seats 12.
Yeah.
Or, somebody's got to figure all that out and apply that all through the system. And you got to have a digital switch where you can go from social distancing campus headquarters to, normal campus headquarters and back in a day. As I mentioned, we started a data analytics division. And when everybody left the campus, we thought, well, there goes our, value add. Well, actually, no, this is probably more valuable than ever. How many people are on the 3rd floor of this building? Is it at capacity? Do you need to move your meeting to the 4th floor because those rooms are empty and there's fewer people on that floor? So it's, you just got to say, what is this new reality likely to look like? And if anything, plan on a little bit more of a cloudy day than not. It's better to prepare for a more different new normal than a more the same new normal.
Yeah, it's so interesting though. Had not thought about that at all. The idea of having visibility into the use of a space from a remote location with reporting that's automated almost. That's powerful. That's way more valuable now than it's ever been.
Right. And you have to think about this whole opening up for business. There's a lot of talk. Is it the president? Is it governors? Honestly, I believe CEOs are going to decide when we all go back to work. And if you think about it, think about that decision. The CEO is going to assemble her entire team of people, but sitting right next to her is her chief legal counsel. And she's going to say, okay, what's the legal read on this? And it's going to be likely, we need to bring our people into as safe of an environment as possible. Mm-hmm. And we need to demonstrate that we did everything reasonable to make it as safe as possible. Well, how are you going to do that if you have no analytics on how many people are on your campus at any time? And it's not just how many people on the campus, where are they? Are they all, if they're all in the break room or the dining facility at the same time, well, then you've violated social distancing. So it's going to take some pretty quick jumping. And again, a lot of people will be listening to this going, that's not what we do. We make sound and we make video. Well, we also make control and we make, infrastructure for IT and we make signals flow. And we just need to kind of take our brain and shift it a little bit and say, oh, well, we could offer some stuff here. For instance, our clients, we're doing standards at about 5 or 6 different corporate enterprise levels. Well, they all want touchless workplace experience now. They don't want to touch kiosks and touch panels and HDMI cables. So we need to be able to take enterprise standards and say, you can walk in the room with your device, you can book that room, you can check into that room, you can launch your meeting, you can share your content, you can do everything without having to touch anybody else's stuff, because there's not going to be enough staff to go wipe down every touch panel and every, kiosk in a headquarters or a university.
Man, even just that sort of thought process change, I bet that's just been most of your day-to-day communication, conversation, brainstorming.
Yeah, COVID-19 is 111% of my job right now. I don't know what I used to do for a living, but this is all I do now.
Yeah, I remember feeling like that when we had kids.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, what did we do before we had kids?
Kind of like that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, okay. So similarly, what are you seeing from the architect community? So the developer community. If you're having to deal with this with existing floor plans, existing buildings, how are they looking at the new normal? What are they adapting to right now?
Well, and I have to give a lot of credit to these firms. It's been an interesting, very fast sea change. So the 2008 Great Recession put a lot of financial strain on corporations and everybody. And corporations looked at, for many of them, their number 2 cost was real estate. And they looked at how do we push more and more people into less and less space, reduce that square foot per person down as small as we possibly can, under the moniker of free address and, all this kind of choice in the workplace and all that, which some of that was pretty good. Some of it wasn't necessarily great for productivity and concentration, but nonetheless, there was this great push to more people in less real estate. Well, guess what? That's the opposite of what we're doing now. So I have to give these guys, men and women, credit. They're pivoting very quickly. And, Cushman and Wakefield put out a video called the Safe 6 Office, I think it's called. You can Google Cushman Safe 6 Office, and wow, they kind of very quickly spun up this very professional video showing how we might all have to exist in workplaces over the next year, 2 years, until we have a vaccine or herd immunity. And it's pretty radical, and it can be kind of a downer, but it might be where we're headed. And that was one of the things that gave me the aha of, okay, there's a whole lot of technology that needs to happen to make this work right. If we're going to get to voice activated conference rooms, that ain't going to happen on its own. We need some smart tech people to work all the kinks out of that machinery. Or is there an interim step where we're just going to use our personal device for a while the voice recognition thing at a corporate level and an IT security level gets to the place it needs to be?
Yeah.
But architects are rethinking the entire built environment around, social distancing. And I just think that's how we're going to have to be. And we're going to have to be able to flip a switch on a dime and go, oop, okay, we're back to social distancing. We tried going full steam. We had some outbreaks. We're going to have to kind of dial it back a bit. And I think what's going to happen, think about that CEO in that meeting. Man, we can all stay at home for another 6 months. Okay, well, that's unpalatable. Man, we can go full on everybody's back. That sounds risky. Why don't we do this thing in the middle? Half of us come back for 2 weeks. Then we have the A team and the B team and we swap. Or you're Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're even day, odd day, whatever works. So we take the same square footage, we put half as many people in it, and we put all these other mechanisms into place to make sure we're practicing social distancing. That's complicated, but that's the world we're stepping into. And I know because our clients are actually doing that right now as we speak.
Man, that's complicated just to think about, much less to accomplish, especially in major metro markets with thousands of employees in a high rise.
Well, let's make it slightly harder. Imagine you're in 20 countries with offices all over the place, with each country having different guidelines and laws, and you're trying to make a policy, that's intense. So again, we work with our clients at an enterprise level. That's how we have to think about them, not just the facility in Atlanta, but Atlanta's one of 20 offices for this law firm or, financial firm or what have you.
So it sounds like if you've got this sort of hypothetical group A, group B, regardless, if you're cutting your staff in half that's in the building, that means a good deal of them are going to be continuing to work from home at some level.
Yeah, so every meeting's going to be virtual and live. Right now, they're all 100% virtual, and you get to know everybody's cat, and you get to know what time the UPS guy comes to everybody's house and all the other things, But every class, every meeting, how are schools going to do this? And schools are the driver. No schools, no business, because you got young kids, right?
Oh yeah.
How old?
12 and under, 4 daughters.
Yeah. So if they don't have a place to go, it's
Yeah.
kind of hard for you guys to just skedaddle and go about your lives.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But how are you going to social distance in third grade? I mean, nothing about elementary school says social distance, right? So that's a whole other challenge that I'm sure a whole bunch of people are sitting in a room figuring out for the fall. Because without that in the fall, we're kind of stuck in where we're at right now, which I call the current normal. The new normal hasn't emerged yet. We're in this current normal, which is hyper, everybody's separated to try to, mitigate the spread right now. That's the only tool we have till we have, a vaccine or therapeutics. So this is it. This is the only hammer we have. And so we're kind of doing that pretty heavily, have been. But it's very complicated to get back to the office. It's not just, okay, everybody come back in on Monday. Well, are we monitoring temperature? Are we keeping track of temperatures? How long do we have to keep track of temperatures? How are we might have to build command and control units for our clients to have a health monitoring center where maybe they've had one for security, but maybe now they need one for all this other stuff. That's going to happen very quickly, and we need to be very nimble about it.
Man, that's crazy. So if half of your staff is working from home, they get used to it, they start to do some go to school at home, they start to like it. I mean, ultimately, isn't that kind of a bad thing for AV? I mean, how do we and the people and the viewers on this call in our industry kind of begin to figure out how to offer something different, something new, something newly normal in the new world we're going to be in? Currently, a year from now, how do we start to think about that?
Well, we've got to quit having our hearts flutter when we see a crane going, oh, goody, they're building something. We have a job, a gig. We need to think about our role as much more about communication and infrastructure. And again, the whole live event space is a whole other thing. That is something where going to a concert is part of the thing, right?
Yeah.
As much as I admire artists giving us little concerts from their den, it's not quite the same, right? Well, we can do this corporate thing, and we can kind of do the education thing, although that's much harder virtually, but we miss a lot. You can't really grow your future leaders unless they have a lot of face time with their mentors. And it's very difficult to do if it's out of sight, out of mind. But we've got to think more broadly about what is our value. Our value right now, for instance, to have 138 employees at those 40 client sites. Well, all of those sites are shuttered. Well, we've been able to maintain virtually all of those employees full-time employed because they have virtualized those companies. So every meeting that was happening in person has turned into a virtual meeting. And if anything, we've been busier helping corporations overnight become virtual corporations. So, while we kind of are in the live events business, if you think about it from that standpoint, we run meetings, but those meetings go on. Conferences and conventions don't, but the meetings keep happening because Coca-Cola still needs to be Coca-Cola. Pfizer still needs to be Pfizer. In fact, they're working on the vaccine more than ever. They need to be Pfizer. We're counting on them. So we're facilitating tons and tons of meetings that are all virtual right now. We're going to get back into this hybrid mode in the next 4, 6, 8 weeks, where some are live, some are virtual. And we got to make sure that playing field is level, where it's not the virtual people way down here and the in-room people kind of get this great experience. So that'll be its own challenge. That's much harder than if everybody's virtual, it's easier. We don't have to deal with big venue audio and big venue video if everybody's virtual. If it's half and half, we have to think, oh, right, can this video play on that streaming platform? Is the resolution proper? Am I getting all my audio where I need to, in the right format so I'm not getting echo? All that complication, we have to embrace in this hybrid environment we're going to enter into.
So what does that look like just one level deeper for those watching? If they're thinking at a high level and they're already kind of down that path and on the track to creating new value, figuring out how to keep and earn new customers with this new value, how do they what's some advice, or how could we pivot and retool? So your example was taking a lot of that same skill set and those 138 folks and sort of pivoting and retooling them into virtual meeting platforms and how to assist and help your customers do that. What are some other pivoting ideas and retooling? How could we work on that?
Well, our industry's invested a lot in touch panel programming and touch panel interfaces. Well, if all of those are going to become personal or spoken, you got to pivot what you've been doing with a button on a restaurant or some other panel into a command you might say out loud, or something you pull up on your phone. Well, how does the phone know what room you're in? Are you doing Bluetooth beaconing? Are you saying, I'm in room 284, I think? Well, you're really in 285, so you're controlling,
someone
sound
else's
in the other
meeting.
room. Yeah, that's not good. So, we got to, but that's what we do. That's what we've been doing for 30 years, 40 years in this industry. And I think, one of the things I tell my staff all the time is we are underappreciated in our time. We're like these magicians that come in at the end of a construction project. And look, construction's hard. Building big buildings is hard. And then the wizards come in and we do this thing we do, which is crazy. It
seems like magic.
It's not like anything else, right?
Yeah.
We're dealing with just madness in the IT and AV world. And so let's take all those smarts and just pivot them over to what the world needs now. And people are going to go, yeah, but I don't know how to do that. Yeah, you do. You just got to go work. It's not going to be handed to you. If everybody could do it, it wouldn't have any value. But the world is going to ask us to do things that we haven't done before, and we just need to do it. Like I said, our data analytics department is looking at that now. We're experimenting with different types of people counting. One that's very high end will tell you exactly where everybody is in the building down to the person, but it's very expensive. One that's really cost effective, but it won't exactly tell you where everybody is, but maybe it's good enough. And then this hybrid thing, well, we can use the video conference technology to tell us how many people are in the meeting rooms, and we can subtract everybody that's in the meeting room who's not in the open plan. Ergo, we know how many people are in the open plan for a lot less money than, seat sensors or something that absolutely counts every single body.
Yeah. I will say, and I wonder if you would agree with me on this. I will say, just to try and insert some positivity and encouragement into this world we're in right now, it just seems stock full of what the heck and negativity. I really believe that the AV industry as a whole has a really good opportunity to have a huge giant head start in adapting, if we can, and if each individual can in their own organization, because we have a lot of experience in dealing with technology that at the end of the day is subjective. So if we're really good at working with in an environment that has a lot of subjectivity to it, well, I don't like the way that sounds, or my candy wrapper does this thing in the mic.
Right.
We can actually have and be prepared for that conversation in a great time of change, right? Isn't that possible?
I mean, I always ask a question, why not us and why not now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we think, oh, well, that's somebody else's job. Surely they're going to do it first, or they're going to figure it out. They're so much bigger than us. I often find that they're waiting for some nerds like us to figure it out, So why not us? Why not us being the people who are the technical wizards that they go, let's get the nerds in here and ask them how they would solve this. Let's be those people.
The interesting part too is, you said it at the beginning of the call, the irony is that a lot of us nerds that are out there doing, technology stuff started out as creative musicians.
Right.
In ways, I'm not even worried about the live industry. These guys are extremely creative. They're going to figure out how to bring entertainment to the masses because that's what they do.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to write a good 3-minute pop song, trust me.
Yeah. I've never heard your stuff, but we'll see one day.
Yeah, one day.
Wait, are you not introducing your new song to the world on this phone call? Did we miss
I am
that?
not.
That's not the agenda?
That's not the agenda today. I was not prepared for that.
Well, I'll tell you what is in the agenda. Question number 2. I love this one. How many parsecs did Han Solo make the Kessel Run in?
I want to say it's 14.
Oh, 12. But bonus question. Is a parsec a measurement of distance?
Wow. See, now you're getting all time space on me. Like,
right?
a light year, is a measure of distance. I think it's distance.
Yes, it is. It's 3.26 light years, or 19.17 trillion miles. Also, what our national debt is, I think, at this point. Just kidding. Not to get political.
We're
We
gonna
won't
have
get
to take a
political.
nerd break after that one,
I know,
Marcus.
right? We're good. We're good. Okay. So this isn't the first time that we've gone through something like this, right? So
Right.
it's not been exactly like this, and certainly
Yeah.
this is incredibly painful for for our country. But there are things that have been similar. There's 9/11 and 2008, and even in many respects, the concept of trying to move towards um, a green building movement or being more friendly to the climate in the way that we grow on our planet. So, in respects to that, how is this different than what you've experienced in your career of 23 years, essentially? How is it different than some of those other crises, and what do you feel
Yeah.
like we can learn from those?
It's sort of a mix of those three, but kind of like the sharpest points of all three of those. So 9/11 was like a shock to the system. It was, we were blindsided, and the world kind of came to a stop. But it was sort of compartmentalized. Yes, the war on terror was a big thing, but it wasn't like planes hit every city in America.
Yeah, yeah,
So we all kind of, when we got over the shock, went back to work. 2008 was a shock to the system, but more in a sort of broad way. And I remember when Lehman Brothers went belly up, and I was reading, they'd been around since the Civil War. And I went to my business partner, Andy, I said, what hope do we have? These guys have been around since the 1800s, and they're gone in a weekend. So that had this broad scope to it, but it was very slow moving. It took like a year or two. Now, if you're in rental staging or live events back then, you felt it pretty quickly.
yeah.
A lot of people canceled events right away. Again, on the consulting side, we're a bit of a lagging indicator. We saw it a year or two later. And the green building movement was similar in that it was transformational. It upset the apple cart of everything we did. You had to reevaluate all that you had sort of been practicing. Hanging a 10,000 lumen projector in the ceiling and going la-di-da, like, okay, well, are we managing power draw on our equipment ever? Are we measuring it ever? Are we dealing with e-waste ever?
Yeah.
So if you take all those three, the sharp, sudden pain, the sort of broad economic destruction, and this transformational thing, and you do it in like 4 weeks, that's what this has been, So I think we can learn from those past experiences, but it doesn't mean, oh, I've been here before, I know the answer is B. No, the answer is figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. So in 2016, you guys became a part of the Compass Group, which for our viewers is probably the biggest company they might not have ever heard of. I certainly didn't know who they were until, honestly, until you guys became a part of that group. So as the world's largest food service and hospitality company, has that been a benefit to Waveguide? Have they been able to help you guys in adapting and pivoting, or are you a segmented part of their company, but they're very global? Has that been an advantage for you as well?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other hour, but it's been great and very informative, and getting a peek inside of that world kind of helped spar some of these ideas that were kicking around my head, because they're dealing with the restart of big corporations going back to work. And if we think technology is complicated, imagine food service in a time of coronavirus. So goodbye to the salad bar. That won't happen again. Goodbye to self-serve coffee. Anything you've got to touch that then you put down and someone else picks up is gone. You got to deal with food safety. You got to deal with the frontline workers who are preparing that food every day, serving it to people. I mean, if you've done any drive-in pickup stuff, you know how complicated it is for restaurants to just get your food to you in a safe manner. Well, imagine if you're feeding Microsoft and you've got, thousands of employees cooking thousands of meals a day, and you got to do it in this sort of safe manner. it's massively complicated. So I'm
Yeah.
a part of a couple of task forces that are looking at what is the return to work plan. And so just being on those calls and in those meetings got me thinking, well, how are we going to do this in our little world? So you begin with things like, okay, well, how many times a day do we have to wipe down room scheduling panels and touch panels and kiosks and HDMI cables? And what army is going to do that? We need to not have any stuff like that. We need to do it all wirelessly and with your own personal device. That's way easier than wiping down HDMI cables. That's just not practical. Yeah. So it just kind of got my head thinking about, this broader picture. And again, we're lucky in a way because technology didn't shut down, but food service did shut down for a lot of, there are no sporting events. So there are no hot dogs being sold, and Compass Group did a lot of that. There are no catered events, and different sectors in Compass Group did a lot of that. So just seeing that impact makes me think, okay, how do we think about what we do and keep adding value, even if we're completely virtual to our clients? And the work we do is to enable our clients to be virtual. Can we still do stuff and, quite frankly, make a living? And so that's the advantage of being part of this big global company, is watching what they're trying to do in the complicated world of food and say, wow, okay, what do we need to do? Because this is real. This isn't like, oh, we're all back to 100% in June. No, it's not going to be that way.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, have you figured out how to virtually serve a hot dog yet on the task force? Is that what you're working on?
Well, they're figuring out how to serve it safely, and that's part of the challenge, is just what will the level of care be? And I think this is going to be determined not by the sort of most risk-taking 20% of the population, but the most risk-averse, who say, look, you're telling me I need to come back into the office. I've got to get on public transit. I've got to, get in an elevator. I've got to eat while I'm there. You got to guarantee me, to the best of your ability, that that's going to be a safe experience, or I'm just going to stay home. So it's going to be driven by that side of our population. And actually, some of that will be good and it'll protect the rest of us, but it is complicated. And again, we just have to do our part in our industry. And I think, like I said, get inside the room and you might hear, well, we don't know how to measure that. Oh, well, we could measure that for you. We could put that in a dashboard for you. You could? Sure. We need to figure it out. Give us 4 weeks, but let us try to figure this out. That's what we need to be doing.
That's fascinating. That's like inserting the word risk into the lowest common denominator. You're literally trying to figure out the lowest risk common denominator as you address what your business is going to look like, or especially Compass. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Huh. All right, I'm going to toss you a softball here. What is the name of the home world of Chewbacca?
This is a tough one.
This is a tough one. Where did this come from, Kevin? There's no
just the hardest questions I could find on the internet about the Star Wars universe.
I know he's a Wookiee, but I don't know what planet Wookiee's name is.
Oh, the answer is not the city in Oklahoma where the Tiger King was filmed. It's the Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk.
Oh, gosh.
That's easy. It's 3 Y's, so I don't know why that's hard.
Kashyyyk.
Rolls
hey,
off
Marcus, I got to break in real quick. Can you get a little closer to the microphone?
Sure.
Just a tiny bit, and then I think it'll be better. All right, cool.
All right.
I'm out of here. See ya.
Great. So, okay. So, we want to take the current situation that you're in, the building new value, the trying to be adaptive and agile to figuring out the new environment. So let's talk about products just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're beyond products here. We know that products and hardware and software are going to be a big part of how we address the new normal. And this is not a sales pitch. You've not been asked to talk about anyone in particular. So for our viewers, this really is just some honest day-to-day feedback from someone like Scott in the industry. So what kind of products do you feel like moving forward can really truly make your job easier in some of the things that you're trying to accomplish for these customers?
Sure. I'm encouraged to see where the wireless gateway folks are going, whether it's Sparkle ClickShare, Immersive Solstice, Crestron Air Media, any of the other flavors of that sort of product family. I think, we for too long who grew up in this industry, we can figure out, oh, I've got a dongle for that, and I can figure out how to change my resolution to make that work. That is not the rest of the world. It needs to be kind of like, oh, I walked in this room and a code popped up and I typed in, oh, look, that worked. It's got to be that simple. And so I'm keeping an eye on where all those folks are going, particularly as they're now integrating, Zoom and WebEx and Teams into that experience to make it sort of the one click done sort of experience. I think fully becoming a network centric industry, really, we're kind of going to own the network because we're going to be most of the bandwidth on the network. Whether it's the sort of virtual processing that's happening out there in audio DSP and control systems, what QSC is doing, what Crestron is doing, all the kind of video over IP products out there like Crestron NVX and others. We need to move to a much more network friendly environment versus all this sort of heavy metal in a rack that sits in a closet somewhere that, kind of does one thing. So that stuff's all pretty interesting, and where we're pivoting to look at, these things just sort of being resources on the network that you can apply to a space as needed, and then change, when the space gets reconfigured or the event for that day changes.
Yeah, or software-based platforms ultimately that can sit on a NUC or something like a Shure IMX room or something that just
exactly
can move around anywhere in the building based on moving a license to a NUC.
Yeah, it's a software-defined experience versus sort of a hardware-defined experience that you use a software interface to talk to.
Yeah.
So, I want to start my meeting, not I want to choose HDMI. I want to go to this input on the TV. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
I want to start my meeting, please.
Novel.
Right.
Not novel coronavirus, novel thinking. So in that vein, what would be an exciting project for you to work on in particular or specifically? If 90 of those projects you're working on and the stuff that you're doing for your customers will include a lot of this new thinking and this new project-based approach, what do you think would be exciting, kind of taken from the last 10 years? What was the most fun project you work on in the last 10 years compared to what would be that same project now or in the next couple of years? What would that look like?
Yeah, well, anybody, I've been doing this 31 years, so you have these kind of moments in your career where you go, wow, that I could have, that was great. I could have stopped right there. I'd have been happy, So our early work at MIT was like that. It was like, holy cow, I can't believe they're hiring us to do this. They're MIT. And so just getting to work up there for a number of years was like getting goosebumps, it's talk about nerd alert, it was just crazy. And from there, the CDC headquarters, all that stuff that's really important today. So we did their emergency operations center, we did their press room, we did their, global communication center, where they're meeting right now. I guarantee you at 4/17 on Monday, they're sitting in some room that we designed and programmed, and it's really important stuff.
That's cool.
That's a big deal. Coca-Cola headquarters, it's been a fantastic, 8-9 year project for us. We just finished McDonald's headquarters last year, fantastic project. We've done 46 offices for Boston Consulting Group all over the world. Great stuff that, we've just been able to help them communicate better, around the world. So those are all kind of really fun things that we have gotten to do. I think now people are trying to have a much more experiential impact on the workplace. Up until 2 months ago, it was like, we got to keep up with the Joneses. We got to attract millennials. We got to have some wow, some kind of cool stuff in our workplace. And some of that's been pretty fun, just to see where people are going with, image display in their, public spaces and auditoria. I mean, we used to struggle just to get a really halfway decent picture. And now we can stand back from a, 0.7 or 0.9 dot pitch LED wall and go, wow, and looking at a 4K image just going, holy cow.
Yeah.
If I could have had this 20 years ago, when I was struggling just to get, flesh tones to render properly on a projector, it would have been great. So, we like doing the big corporate headquarters projects. Those are fun, but, we try to find the beauty in all the little jobs too. And it's, you're making a difference. You're helping people communicate, which is kind of important right now. So you try to get some satisfaction out of that.
That's cool. I mean, that's the core basis of humans communicating with each other, right?
Yeah.
And our space and audio and video. I mean, we're at the core of that. I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's exciting too. So, all right, we're going to ask one more Star Wars question, and then Kevin's going to jump in and give you some questions from the chat. Hopefully, some of our some of our viewers have dialed in. And
Yeah, we got some good ones.
Good.
Oh, good.
So, first things first. Who shot first, Han or Greedo, in episode?
I think Han shot first. He's a hothead, man.
That's right.
He had his back up against the wall.
You got it.
He was
you
not
nailed
thinking to.
He's my favorite character, by the way, from all the movies. I love Han Solo. Okay, so Kevin, hit us with some of these questions that might have come in on the chat. You're muted, Kevin.
Yeah, I knew that.
He's a pro.
Yeah, maybe. Actually, totally forgot to unmute. But yeah, we are now entering Q&A time. So we have a couple questions here. And if you have any more, go ahead and drop them in the chat on the right side of the window. Or if you're watching on mobile, it should be on the left bottom hand side. Let's see. The first question came from Jake Corlett. And Jake asks, what happens to the huddle room with social distancing? Does it go away or is it still viable?
Great question. So if it seats 4 on a good day, can you get 6 feet away? So I think you're going to put 4 people in an 8 or 10 person room. I think the huddle room becomes the focus room, honestly. That's where you're going to go do your solo work with a nice big screen. Kind of doesn't suck. It's a lot better than, a lot of the phone booth rooms you'd sit in. Mm. Honestly, I think that's what happens in social distancing is that is a room for 1 in most cases. Now, maybe you could stretch it to 2, but what are you doing at that point? How many 2-person meetings do you need that you sit in a 10 by 10 or 10 by 12 room? Just get on a video chat with somebody at that point. It begins to lose its stickiness if you can't put 4 people in there, working collaboratively. So that's a great question because that has been, 60, 70, 80% of the room inventory is that room, and everybody's been creating the huddle room product, right? I think that's going to be in a very elaborate 1-person room for a while in social distancing. Again, maybe 2, depending on how big that room is.
Yeah, so it's almost like now instead of a huddle room, it's just going to be a cone of silence, right? Yeah. It'll be where you can go to get your private work done.
Right.
So that was a good question, though. I was wondering about that myself. Let's see. Next question here is from Heather Corbin, and she said, Scott, what changes do you see in how architects will design or modify workspaces, specifically regarding will we see less open floor plans?
Well, I think free address is retired for the time being. I think people will be assigned workspaces, and you'll actually have to book your workspace before you go to work, most likely. And again, that gets back to your scheduling software. Can you even do that? Or do we need to go into the scheduling software and say, we need to make every workstation bookable so that people can spread out over the course of the day? I've never been a huge fan of the open plan anyway. At Waveguide, our headquarters, when we renovated, we built offices. We have beautiful glass walls, floor to ceiling into them, but guess what? We all can shut our door. 80% of us have a private office. Now that sounds insane in this current world, and we're not a 20,000 person company. So the math might change if we were, but I think we got to think about, there's a saying made famous by Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, maybe this is a crisis we need to not let go to waste. We need to rethink the open plan anyway. Was it working all that well? who was it working for? Corporate real estate, the money people? Was it really working for the worker? And aren't we trying to be productive? Maybe this is kind of a reshuffle of that deck of cards to go, okay, let's figure out, why do we come to an office? And let's make that experience as good as possible.
Quick follow-up to that, real quick, Duthu. Who will make that decision?
Well, corporate real estate has a massive role in that, because they're in charge of figuring out that sort of, this department can fit on this floor. Okay, they could until social distancing. Now, how are they going to fit on that floor? HR has to be involved. Each department head has to be involved, and ultimately the CEO has to make the call. But it's massively complicated. You may have one department that absolutely cannot work virtually, and another department's completely fine doing it. In fact, they get 2 hours of their day back because they're not stuck in traffic, and they can be more productive. So it's probably not going to be one size fits all, even within the same corporation at one site. And then, is that fair for everybody? Well, that's a whole other matter. But, some of us are very lucky that we have jobs that can be virtualized, right? I spend most of my time on a computer doing computery things. I'm not on an assembly line. I'm not, serving food. There's a lot of frontline things that just can't be virtualized, and we got to make it safe for those folks. For the rest of us, I think we just have to think, let's build the best hybrid situation we can until we go, okay, we have a vaccine and we're past this moment.
That's true. All right, let's see. We got another one here. This one's from David McLaughlin, and he asked, do you think we will start seeing 60+ inch displays at people's desks so others can stand 6 feet away to see their screen?
I think, David, you just want a 60-inch screen at your desk.
Yeah, who doesn't, right?
I doubt it. I do think we've spent a bunch of years talking, having the touch interface be this appealing thing. Ooh, I want a touch wall. I want a kiosk. I want a digital signage you can go up and touch. And I think that's going to go away. It might be gesture. It might be that you're doing it from your user interface. But I don't see that happening, mainly because the investment in that would be pretty crazy. I think you'll just share your screen with somebody else and get on a call. You might be getting on a call with somebody 4 cubicles away, which sounds silly, but that might be how we do it. We do it in our office right now. Maybe we're just lazy nerds, but Shane works down the hall from me, and he'll hit me up on Teams, and I'm like, I can see him, but it's just faster because we've got 3 screens each, and he's like, I just want you to look at something real quick. So that was faster than him emailing it to me, walking down to my office, or bringing his laptop, coming in. We do it all the time. It's not that strange once you get used to it.
Yeah, it can be efficient when it's used correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have another question here. This one's from Kep Parsons. Do you think that the HVAC systems will have to be modified in order to kill germs and or the virus?
Yeah, that's a big deal. And I'm not a mechanical engineer, but that whole industry is looking at that as a huge factor. And again, how quickly can you renovate all that stuff? That's a heavy lift, because social distancing, you can imagine just doing this A team, B team, and monitoring. But, getting better fresh air in the building, that's all been part of the green building movement. So a lot of people might be in pretty good shape there. But if you think about the inventory of buildings on planet Earth that aren't green, that's going to be a big challenge. And we'll let those folks figure that one out. We got enough on them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure hospitals are going to be the first to start that, I assume, with the clean air.
Yeah, they've got, they already have a higher level of, clean air ventilation, requirements, guidelines they follow. So maybe the lessons from that industry are going to hit everybody.
Yep, exactly. Let's see another question here. This one's from Eric Bernhardt. What happens to... Oh, there you go. What happens to audio design when we are distance and alternatively wearing or not wearing masks?
Yeah,
Good one.
It's a good one. And I see these people saying, well, we're going to return to work, but of course everybody's going to wear a mask. I'm like, no, thanks. Check, please. I'll stay at home.
What do you mean? Oh, okay.
Yeah. We had, if we had done this entire interview with masks on, we don't need to because we're all in separate places, but we're not communicating the same information. And I have a hard time seeing, somebody having a headset mic, wrestling on a mask. I think at some point you're just going to go, okay, I'm up here on the stage. I'm 10 feet, 20 feet from anybody. I'm going to take my mask off for the duration of this, meeting. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Once you start peeling this onion, there's just more onion. And we're going to run into all these layers of onion as we go back to work.
That's true. Let's see. We have another one here. This one's from Chad Rigler. Scott, you mentioned you do higher ed as well. What are you seeing and hearing with the fall semester coming up and possibly no in-person classes, I would assume, period?
So my sister's a college English professor, and I was talking to her this past weekend, and I'll get to the students in a minute. It is brutal on faculty to try to be this, overnight, this complete virtual thing, because a lot of students can't do the synchronous learning thing because they either don't have the bandwidth, they don't have a quiet house, they're working job, there's all kinds of reasons. They're taking care of somebody who's sick. So you have to do this asynchronous thing, which means, my sister's getting emails morning, noon, and night from students, and she's feeling like she's got to respond, which normally would be a question in a classroom that she would say, hey, great point, Susan. What do you think, Bill? And, they would have a discussion. How do you facilitate that virtually? So I'm not sure it's sustainable for faculty. Okay, Marcus has to get those youngins out of the house so he can go be HWPCO, right? And so watching a bunch of 9-year-olds do a Zoom call, that's just chaos. I don't, hats off to any teacher who can teach ABCs over, video conferencing. You're a magician if you can do that, because they're so distracted. Oh my God, I'm on TV. Oh my God, I did a background. Oh, check this out, So I don't think it works very well. And of course, then there's the whole economics of education. Universities can't function if, say, 25, 30, 45% of the people say, I'm just gonna take a gap year. I'm not paying $50,000 to go to this university and not attend. I'll just take a year off. Well, schools aren't set up for that. Their cost base is there. They need to have matriculating students paying tuition to work. And I'm not on any college university task force. That is difficult. You're putting a bunch of young people very close quarters, and you think of college, they all eat at the same time, they all hang out, and tight auditoriums, because that's what economically works. We can do distance learning. We've been doing it for 40 plus years. To overnight pivot to that, something is lost. And I'm a big believer in sending your kids to college, even if it's 6 miles down the road at Georgia Tech. It's good for them to go away. And I don't think you can replicate that over a series of video calls.
Yeah. I mean, humans are social animals as it is.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we're just held up in our homes, it's just, you're going to get perpetually distracted and you'll lose interest over time.
Yeah. It's not worth the economic bargain that we've made. We've said this college experience is worthwhile and I'm willing to pay this much money for it. But if it's just sitting in the basement, doing Zoom calls, that changes the equation. I'm not paying full fare for that,
Exactly. So we do have one more question that just came through. Let's see. This one's also from David McLaughlin. How can us AV manufacturers help the consultants and the dealers and the rep firms to support you in this time of change?
Yeah, a lot of the rep firms and manufacturers are stepping up. We've got a lot of virtual consultant councils that have cropped up. I was just on one with Barco the other day, really great group of consultants. For many years, the lunch and learn has been a thing. You guys come in our office and do it, and we appreciate it. But when we're not there, how do you stay in touch? Well, virtual training is a great thing. Virtual trade shows is a great thing. Now that we don't have to worry about travel, we can put the right people in the meetings. So instead of saying, hey, that's a great question, I'll get back to you with an answer. Well, let's just dial in the person who knows the answer. Let's get it right now. Because maybe something will spark out of that. Like, oh, I never thought about that, says the nerd who knows the answer. And then they're off to the races, solving some other problem. So again, let's let this crisis be a good opportunity to rethink how we did everything, including, work with consultants and integrators and other channel partners.
Great. Well, I think that's all for the questions we have. And we're 3 minutes over the hour. We were worried about 45 minutes.
Kevin, I've got one more, bro.
Oh, here we go.
I've got one more. All right.
Is this the buzzer beater?
This is the one. Scott, if you were a Sith Lord, what would be your Darth handle?
Oh, man.
This is the one right here. This changes the game.
Wow.
And don't say Darth COVID. That's pretty awesome, actually.
No, see, my superpowers are all on the bright side. I would be a terrible Sith Lord. I'd be like Darth Smiley or something like that. They would kick me out in like 9 seconds.
Demoted.
The happiest of all Darths.
I would be the happiest of all Darths. They would call me,
Darth
Happy.
Smiley. Man, that's great. Oh,
that's good.
Right. Look, thank you. Thank you so much, Scott, for taking time. I've enjoyed this a ton. Thank you guys to everyone out there who's tuned in. I hope this was valuable to you. Tune in more to HWP Core Media, our YouTube channel here. We're going to just keep developing and creating content that will hopefully move us all forward. So we say thank you. We say be safe and be healthy. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.